Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, November 28th. I'm your host, Tom Moore. The game against Michigan is in 368 days, but well before that Michigan game, and maybe even before the Buckeyes play their next game, wherever that may be for bowl season, they might be doing a little shopping in the transfer portal. 'Tis the season to, pack the malls and do your shopping and, maybe make a little bit of a wish list. So we're going to be making a little bit of a wish list for the Buckeyes in terms of what they might be looking for in the transfer portal this offseason. And a couple interesting names already popped up in the portal, a couple of Ohio natives who might fit what the Buckeyes are looking for at a couple different spots. We'll be talking about that with Marc Givler of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Mark, let's talk about the first name that popped up. That was Carter Smith. He is a Central Ohio native. Started 12 games as a redshirt freshman, but when Tom Allen hit the unemployment line, Carter Smith hit the portal. That certainly seems like that might be a good fit for Ohio State.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting. There had been no contact directly with Carter as of this evening here, as of Monday evening. But I know Ohio State's looking into this. They're already doing their homework on this one. His brother's actually a walk-on in Columbus right now. So there's a family tie there that they can kind of use as the go-between. Not that they need to now; they can directly contact him in the portal, but they can kind of, use the family tie there to their advantage. This was not a kid they offered out of high school. Was a highly recruited kid. Was one of the top maybe 20, 25 players in Ohio coming out of high school. Ohio State did not offer. That was essentially a Greg Stajwara decision. So the fact that they've kind of changed offensive line coaches in the last 2 years, I think helps as well. They're not necessarily dealing with the same person who did most of the evaluating in high school. They're not dealing with maybe the same person who, shunned him, for lack of a better word, and now snubbed him, whatever you want to put it. So they're not, there's no animosity there toward the current regime or anything like that. So there's some things that make this interesting. I started at left tackle, played pretty well this year, can play guard as well. And it's one of those deals where it would make a lot of sense from Ohio State's end to bring in a couple of offensive linemen this offseason to push some competition. I mean, we talked about the offensive line so much in the spring, and when Ryan Day comes out basically this fall and says, yeah, there's no one in the twos other than maybe Luke Montgomery who's really, pushing for playing time or pushing on his starters, that's a little bit alarming. So this would be interesting. And there's a lot of moving parts here for Ohio State. You've got, is Donovan Jackson coming back? That could change the math one way or the other. If Donovan Jackson does not come back, Carter Smith, again, plays the left side. You could put him at left tackle. You could kick Simmons to right. You could move Fryer inside. You could keep the tackles as they are. Carter Smith plays left guard. And then maybe Luke Montgomery plays right guard, does the Paris Johnson thing in year two. So this would make a lot of sense in terms of giving them some flexibility and also giving them a proven commodity. He's got 3 years to play three. This is not a rental. He's got 3 years of eligibility left.
Yeah, so this could be a little bit of a Josh Simmons situation where you bring him in and, year one, Josh Simmons was an immediate impact player for them, got a lot better as the first season went along, and you figure he's going to fit somewhere on the line in his second year. And yeah, you've got another couple of years with Carter Smith. That seems like that might be a pretty good opportunity for them. And if the name sounds sort of vaguely familiar, I actually had him on the morning show several years ago, back during COVID. He wrote a really, really well-written piece about how the NCAA was, I'm going to simplify this and just say really kind of hosing high school recruits by not letting anyone visit campuses and really making life unnecessarily difficult for a lot of recruits back then. Had him on the morning show a couple of years ago to talk about that, and then he ended up going to Indiana. But we'll see where he ends up after that. Another Ohio native, Zeke Correll, he ended up at Notre Dame, 3-year starter for the Irish. He is now in the portal as well, and he played center last year for them. Mark, is that correct? I mean, that feels like that's another spot where Ohio State had Carson Hinsman, and you figure Carson Hinsman's getting better next year, but having another body there that is a proven veteran guy who has played at a relatively high level, that seems like that might be another addition worth exploring for the Buckeyes as well.
Yeah, it does. Would certainly make sense to explore it. A very different situation than Carter Smith in a lot of ways. Zeke was actually offered by Ohio State coming out of high school, and was a guy they really liked and wanted to get. They were not able to land him, and again, that was under Greg Stajuara, so there's no bad feelings there toward Justin Fry. He was not the offensive line coach at Ohio State at the time, so kind of a reset button there. The difference, obviously, we talked about the difference there with the recruiting aspect, but the difference of on field is this is kind of like a graduate player, so you're talking about a 1-year kind of plug-in stopgap. You're also talking about a guy who's pretty strictly an interior guy. Could he fill a guard spot? I think that's possible. But would you be bringing him in to compete with Carson Hinsman at center? So I think, again, it gives you a little bit of flexibility, but he's pure interior. And again, does Donovan Jackson leave? Does that change anything? Or are you looking at Zeke Correll? I think that's kind of the first decision they have to make. Are we looking at Zeke Correll as a guard? Or are we looking at Zeke Carell as, again, a center to push Hinsman because maybe we're not thrilled with how that played out this year? But some different questions there than you have with Carter Smith, some different dynamics at play there. But another guy that I think they'll at least do their research on and consider contacting.
Yeah, and the only thing that's like a sure thing right now is that Matt Jones is done. Matt Jones will be off to greener pastures after this season. Anything else, as you mentioned, Donovan Jackson could come back. You could move Josh Fryer into guard. That could open up a spot at tackle. You could put Luke Montgomery guard. I mean, there's a million different pieces you could sort of shuffle around here. Having a few more pieces to try and make the puzzle fit together pretty neatly, that seems like another one that might fit somewhere in that mix. Something to keep an eye on for sure. Offensive line, not the only spot where the Buckeyes could be doing a little portaling this offseason. Where else do you see them potentially looking to find? You're not going to bring in 40 guys like Colorado did last offseason, but they've been generally pretty selective. You pick 5 guys, something like that, 5, 6, maybe it's more this year. But where else do you see them looking to maybe potentially add someone in the portal this offseason?
Yeah, you almost have to categorize this as needs and wants. If a superstar becomes available at like wide receiver, like someone like Evan Stewart from Texas A&M has come up as a possible portal guy. I think a player of that caliber, even at receiver, you would take a look at. But for the purposes of kind of what we're talking about here, I think kind of maybe lean more toward the needs right now. Again, definitely some offensive linemen, at least 1, maybe 2, depending how things shake out. I know they want to push the competition in that room this offseason, and which is really needed in my opinion. And then you look at the defensive line. Who's coming back? Because if they lose a bunch of guys to the NFL early, you need a defensive tackle probably. You may need a pass rusher. You may need an edge guy. I'll throw out another position, linebacker. If Cody Simon doesn't come back, you've just lost your top 3 linebackers in a room that's not super deep to begin with. Arvell Reese is probably going to stay on the outside. I think they'd be interested in a linebacker, and even in the secondary. I know again what's going to shake out there. I think they're probably pretty happy with corner to an extent, but if Jordan Hancock leaves, you're going to need you may be looking for a nickel guy, and you may be looking for a safety anyway, just because of all the stuff you're losing back there. So I think all 3 levels of the defense will get a look, and whether it's a need or a want will probably be determined by who goes early to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, they could lose their 4 starting defensive linemen. You could lose your 3 starting linebackers. You're going to lose Josh Proctor. You could lose, you're probably losing Denzel Burke. You could lose Jordan Hancock. I mean, you could really pretty much be completely overhauling the defense. And, there is certainly some young talent there, but I go back to the year after Pete Werner and Tuff Borland and who was with them, Malik Harrison. They all left, and all of a sudden it was okay. Well, you've got all these guys who've been waiting for years, and it was Kayvon Pope and Dallas Gant and someone else, and and it just that didn't work at all. So you kind of had this sort of lost year, and you've seen enough from some of the younger guys behind them that it's probably not going to be quite that, but you don't know what you got until they have to do it on, when the bullets are flying for real. So yeah, definitely an interesting conversation there. A lot of possibilities. You're obviously not going to be able to add, your whole defense from there. You're not going to add, 15 guys from the portal, but it may be more of an aggressive portal season for Ohio State than we've seen in the past. So we'll be keeping an eye on that for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Early signing day coming up in just over 3 weeks. December 20th is early signing day this year. Buckeyes have to wrap up their 2024 class probably around that point, and there are probably lots of big names to watch. Can the Buckeyes get the spatula out? Can the Buckeyes keep other people from getting the spatula out on them? Making a couple last-minute flips. Going to be a lot of drama this December as we'll be following that. I'm guessing this will not be the last time you hear from Mark in the next week or so as we talk recruiting, talk transfer portal, and much more there. Also planning to have Ross Fulton on a little later on in the week and talk a little bit about what he saw, what he learned during that Michigan game from the Ohio State offense, Ohio State defense, and much more. Later on tonight, we'll be watching the college football playoff selection show with you. Kevin, Tony, and I watching that. We'll find out a lot more about where the Buckeyes stand in those rankings. How far are they going to drop? It shouldn't be that far, right? After losing to number 3 on the road in the last minute, you wouldn't think they'd go plummeting down the rankings. But we'll find out exactly how much help they will need this weekend if they want to sneak in the back door to the college football playoff week again this year, like they did last year, and much, much more. You can find all of that content and much more at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.